In MBTI, I've seen online a couple different people saying, well, and wife as well, um, saying, oh, I used to be this type and now I've become this type. And I don't ever wish to negate anybody's experiences if they really do feel they've gone through such a drastic psychological change in their life that they've become a brand new type. So be it. Perhaps there's an exception to the conclusion that I've come to about this. But overall, I find that people who say that just don't necessarily understand the depth that each type has, and that's understandable. There's only 16 different types, and it seems so set in stone. If you're a feeler, if you're an ENF, for example, I'm an ENFP, right? Um, I've always when I first received that, I felt intuitively, yes, this is true, this is accurate, this is who I am. But there was a sense of, but I'm a deep thinker as well. I'm very logical. I enjoy in tropical astrology. I'm a Gemini. I have Mercury, Gemini, Sun, and Mercury in the house of Aquarius. I have Saturn in Aquarius in the house of Libra. I have all this air energy, especially with Mercury and the Sun there. It's like, oh, but I'm a thinker. So I did struggle with that a little bit when I was first diagnosed, I guess, as an ENFP, because it felt like it wasn't a complete picture of who I was. But especially over the last couple of years, I've come to understand that every single type has the four different cognitive functions associated with it. So, for example, as an ENFP, I have extroverted intuition as my dominant function. As my auxiliary function, I have introverted feeling. As my tertiary function, I have extroverted thinking. And then my inferior function, introverted sensing. So the tertiary function of extroverted thinking is, excuse me, where we find my thought process. And something that's really interesting, and I really have been enjoying thinking about, is how every single type has these four: sensing, feeling, thinking, and intuition. It has these four functions. Now, they don't necessarily have of course, they don't have the same, whether it's introverted or extroverted, as another type, because that's what makes that type that type. But we all have these four different things. And it reminds me of astrology, how yes, even though we have energies more often than not, of course, there are some cases of exceptions to the rule, but more often than not, we all are a hodgepodge of different energies. And we have Mercury here, and Venus there, and Mars there, and Jupiter here, and we have fire energy, and earth energy, and air energy, and water, and cardinal here, and mutable, and fixed, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we're all on this same planet. We're all being impacted by the same ring of energies, the same regions of space that make the 12 different zodiac signs. It's not about the constellations. I've gone through that in several videos before. It's about the regions of space. And we're all privy to the seasons as well. We're all privy to these 12 energies in our daily life. For example, right now we've just entered Virgo at the time of this video. So Sun is transiting the region of space known as Virgo. We all, when we're born, have Virgo, for example, and this goes true for every single energy, but just as an example, we all have Virgo somewhere in our chart. So even if we don't have an outright Virgo placement, like I, for example, do not, we have, there could be things in the house of Virgo, like, for example, Uranus and Neptune for me. Or at the very least, we have that house placement. For me, it's my second house cusp in Virgo. That region of space impacts me from that particular way. And so with the MBTI system, we all have these four different, these two different modes of perception, of intuition and sensing, of the abstract and the physical, the sense realm. And we all have these two different modes of distinction through thinking and feeling. Now again, whether it's extroverted or introverted, that's a whole different, backdrop. Anyways, that's a whole other topic for discussion. But something else that this reminds me of is the importance of holism, of learning from those who are different from you. For example, one of my best friends is an ESFP as opposed to being an ENFP. Now, in some ways, we're very similar. The tertiary and auxiliary functions for these two signs are the exact same. Introverted feeling for our auxiliary and extroverted thinking for our tertiary. And that's a beautiful thing. Quick note, only two signs out of the 16 signs will have the same two middle functions, same as the last two functions. So, for example, ENTP and ENFP both have extroverted intuition, introverted sensing for their dominant and then their inferior. But anyways, getting back to ESFP, their dominant function. So one of my best friends' dominant function is extroverted sensing. My dominant function is extroverted intuition. It's incredibly worthwhile for me to learn from him, and vice versa. I know because he's told me. I don't necessarily presume that. And I've seen it too, where our different modes of perception, our different modes of being are extremely helpful. Now, we do clash. I find this to be like the squares in astrology. So, for example, a sun in Gemini and a sun in Virgo, they square each other. You can actually see it, like physically. And I know my old backdrop is present, but basically the zodiacal wheel, you have an energy here, and then no matter what energy it may be, Aries, Capricorn, Cancer, Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius, Leo, Scorpio, Taurus. You have these different energies that square it that are very similar but very different as well. So, for example, with me and my friend, extroverted sensing, extroverted intuition, they both are extroverted, obviously, and they're both modes of perception being the dominant function. And so it's incredibly worthwhile to learn from him. Now, what's for myself, because I get to see a whole other picture. Just like, for example, with him, I don't think there. Okay, yeah, there is an example actually. For example, he's got Venus in Taurus, and I have Venus in Leo, and so we have another square going on, and perhaps that contributes to the MBTI. Actually, that makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Taurus being the more sensorial, I don't know if that's a word, but it should be sensory, and Leo being very idealistic, I suppose. That's a little bit harder to argue, but in any case, I guess intuitive it could be. But my point is this: it's essential for us to learn from people who are different from us. Now, whether we're utilizing the psychological system of MBTI or astrology, we are able to learn from every single other person, and that's something I've really enjoyed in both systems. It may seem like I have favorites because there are a lot of videos I still haven't posted for actually both systems, but I really don't. It's just there's some that are more readily apparent to me of what to say, and I guess others I have to kind of chew over a little bit more because they may not be in my direct realm of experience. But I gained so much, so much, and I truly do mean this when I say that no sign or no type is better than another or is more preferred by me than another, because each one has its own wisdom, it has its own experiences, it has its own gifts, it has its own challenges that I love to study and learn from. So whether it's an ISTJ or an ESTJ or an INFP or an Aquarius or a moon in Pisces or whatever, there's so much to gain from. And so I know that we've kind of gone seemingly off topic, but I want to tie this all back together. Again, I don't wish to make any kind of psychological statement that might negate somebody's experiences, but I feel that people who say that they're one type and that they have changed to become another type, that's not necessarily accurate. I don't think they necessarily know the MBTI system. And if you have experiences that are contrary to this, please, of course, leave your YouTube comments. Or if you have experiences that are complementary to this, leave your YouTube comments. I always read them, always. And I like to gain that perspective. But before you do, hear me out. We have 4 different cognitive functions that we are continuing to grow into throughout our entire lives. And we can gain from anybody else is out there. So even though I'm an extroverted intuition individual as a dominant, or introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, introverted sensing, I gain immeasurably from learning about other people who have the opposite of that. So introverted intuition, or any of the sensing. Well, I suppose I have one of the sensing too. So extroverted sensing, introverted intuition, extroverted feeling, introverted thinking. And the same goes for astrology as well in both aspects. As we grow older, we get more familiar with our Saturn energy, especially as we hit around 28, 29, but really as time goes on. We get more familiar with our Jupiter energy, especially after every 12 years when we go through a new cycle, and so it becomes more cemented in our lives. The Venus energy, the Mars, we go from our sun sign, our moon sign, our rising sign, and really, I mean, from the beginning, our sun sign, and we grow into these other qualities. Now, of course, to draw a direct correlation to astrology is erroneous from MBTI because that's astronomical fact. That's the one challenge with MBTI. It's difficult to say I'm an ENFP because I was born on this day and with that region of space, this planet was, or this astronomical body was in that region of space in relation to the Earth. So it's astronomical fact. I am this. Okay, you don't really have that. So there is an element of self-discovery, of self-knowledge, inherent even in taking the test and being accurately deduced as this type or that type. But of course, somebody who studied MBTI has become an expert on it. It's a lot easier for a person like that to, and sometimes it can be beneficial to ask these, to inquire from one of those individuals, what type do you think I am? Let's get to know me, let's get to know each other, and of course, just ask me questions. Um, And so, do I think that if somebody experiences a huge shift in their life, is oh well, I'm an ENFJ, but I'm thinking more than ever. I feel like I've become an ENTJ. Chances are that person doesn't know the full cognitive functions, which is fine. Ignorance is not anything to be punished, but it's important for that person to learn about their inferior function of introverted thinking and to understand. Well, first of all, ENTJ is going to have extroverted thinking as their first function, so there's a lot to learn, but to learn about themselves, to explore their inferior function of introverted thinking and go, oh, okay, I'm just at a place in my life now where I'm embracing the accuracy realm of thought. I'm embracing how important it is to not only be engaged in feelings in an extroverted manner, as is my dominant function as an ENFJ. I understand the importance, and I'm practicing the skill of perceiving in accordance with introverted intuition of an inner goal or inner understanding of the world based off of inner patterns that I can then extrapolate to the outside world. And I've worked through the gift. I've practiced the gift of extroverted sensing, of looking at the outside world, of sensing, of feeling it, of being in connection with it, and doing things um, to impact my environment. And I'm now at a place where I'm exercising my inferior function of introverted thinking. It's really important to get to know your four cognitive functions. And if you're not sure what your sign is, to what your type is, to look at all of the different types. It can be a little bit daunting, but it's pretty easy to pare it down. For example, when I was still ignorant of the cognitive functions and all the different types, I still could say, I'm a very sensitive human being. I definitely need time to myself, but overall, I'm very extroverted. I naturally just find myself going, yes, here. This is what I think. This is what I. It's a little bit more difficult for. This is what I feel because I'm an introverted feeler, but overall, I'm more of a you know. I need my moments, but it's more of a output instead of an input per se in a way. Um, Not saying that extroverted isn't capable of input, but its natural mode is more output. Okay, well that narrows down right there all of the introverted sides. Okay, intuitive sensor, and you just go into intuitive sensor. How do I perceive? Is it more on the material realm? Is it more on the abstract realm? Ideals versus pragmatism, in a sense. And you might find yourself really close. It might be hard, but ultimately you're gonna find something that feels a little bit more you. Again, even with ENFP, I still felt like no, I'm overall a feeler, for sure. And again, it's a hard distinction to make, especially if one isn't psychologically minded, because as an ENFP, or let's say as an ENTP, the middle functions, the auxiliary and tertiary function, which is only they're right next to each other, so they both are relied on. I wouldn't say equally, but they, as development goes on, equally perhaps one could argue, but they're both very important, um, and they both. It doesn't take long to graduate from one to the next, and so with ENFP, for example, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking as a tertiary, ENTP, introverted thinking, extroverted feeling for the auxiliary and the tertiary functions. So it's difficult. It is difficult, and I don't wish to ever shame anybody and say you don't know enough or you're ignorant. No, I don't mean to do that. It's just it's important to know your type. It's important to learn about all the different types. Just like it's important to learn about your signs, your chart, and it's important to learn about all the different charts because You want to grow the best way possible, and you also want to understand other people and not leave any kind of blind spots for yourself. To ultimately, blind spots about other people are going to be blind spots about yourself too. So it's a dual benefit that is just exponentially rewarding for both your inner development as well as your harmony, your interactions with other people, and being able to have fruitful, uh, mutually beneficial interactions, and just being able to understand all these different modes of being. But it starts with knowing you. What is your type? What is your sign? And then growing from there. That's just the beginning. It's not a prison. It's not a brick wall. This is your sun sign. This is your moon sign. That's it. No, no. And I don't even mean in the span of there's so much more to discover as per the cognitive functions, or there's so many other astronomical placements that you have. Yes, absolutely. That's part of the journey. But then after that, you expand even further. What is it like to have moon in Aries? I have a double water moon. What is it like to have Mercury in Taurus? What is it like to have a tertiary function of extroverted sensing? It's fascinating. And so even though a lot of people might focus more so on themselves, which is natural and that's the base, I challenge you to challenge yourself continuously to go from focus on self and really going deep, 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 knowing all of the functions, knowing all of your signs, and then focus on others, and then focus on all. Focus on everything that's out there. Infinite love to you, my friend. Namaste.